As a photographer, I've always been drawn to abandoned places. There's something about the decay and neglect that I find hauntingly beautiful, so when I heard about an abandoned farm on the outskirts of town, I knew I had to see it for myself. I packed my camera bag and set off early in the morning, eager to explore the property before the sun got too high in the sky. As I pulled up to the farm, I could see that it was even more derelict than I had imagined. The barn was caving in on itself, and the house looked like it was about to fall down. I parked my car and made my way to the front door of the house. The door was locked, but I found a way in through a broken window. The air inside was thick with dust and cobwebs, and the floorboards creaked under my feet. As I explored the rooms, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was as if the ghosts of the former inhabitants were still present, haunting the place long after they were gone. I made my way to the second floor, where the bedrooms were located. The first bedroom was empty, save for a few old pieces of furniture. But when I entered the second bedroom, I froze. In the corner of the room was a figure, hunched over and motionless. At first, I thought it was just a mannequin or a statue, but as I got closer, I realized it was a corpse. The sight of the dead body made my heart race. I knew I had to get out of there, but my curiosity got the better of me. Who was this person, and how did they die? I took a closer look at the body and noticed something strange. There were deep claw marks on its neck, as if something had attacked it. I couldn't imagine what could have caused such wounds, but the thought of it sent chills down my spine. Suddenly, I heard footsteps on the stairs. I panicked and quickly made my way to the window I had entered through. But as I looked out, I saw something that made me freeze in terror. Outside, there were dozens of figures, all staring up at me with lifeless eyes. They were dressed in old-fashioned clothing, and their skin was a sickly gray color. I knew then that I had to get out of the house and off the property as quickly as possible. As I made my way back to my car, I could hear the figures outside shuffling closer and closer. I jumped into my car and peeled out of the driveway, my heart pounding in my chest. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me, something that had been awakened by my presence on the abandoned farm. I inherited my family's farm after my parents passed away. They had always warned me about the strange occurrences on the property, but I had never believed them. That is, until I moved back to the farm and began experiencing things myself. At first, it was just small things, like strange noises at night and unexplained cold spots in the house. But as time went on, the occurrences grew more intense and more terrifying. One night, I was awoken by a loud banging on the front door. I stumbled out of bed and made my way to the door, heart pounding. When I opened it, there was no one there, just the sound of rustling leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. I tried to go back to sleep, but the banging continued throughout the night. Each time I opened the door, there was no one there. I was sure I was going insane. The next day, I decided to take a walk around the property, hoping to clear my mind. As I walked past the old barn, I noticed something strange. There was a small window on the side of the barn that I had never noticed before, and it was boarded up from the inside. Curiosity getting the better of me, I climbed up onto the roof of the barn and looked through the window. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was a figure inside the barn, crouched in the corner, facing away from me. It was dressed in old, tattered clothing, and its skin was a sickly gray color. I could hear it muttering something under its breath, but I couldn't make out the words. I climbed down from the roof and ran back to the house, shaking with fear. That night, the banging on the door started again, and this time, I could hear the muttering of the figure from inside the barn. As the banging on the door continued, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit there and let the spirits of the land torment me any longer. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way to the barn. As I entered the barn, I could feel the energy in the air shift. The muttering grew louder, and the figure in the corner turned to face me. Its eyes were empty and lifeless, and its mouth twisted into a sinister grin. I tried to run, but something held me back. It was as if the energy in the barn had become a physical force, pinning me to the ground. The figure began to move towards me, its twisted grin growing wider with each step. I closed my eyes, waiting for the worst. But then, Everything went silent, the energy in the barn dissipated, and the figure vanished into thin air. I stood up, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. The banging on the door had stopped, and the feeling of being watched had disappeared. In that moment, I knew that the spirits of the land had finally found peace. They had claimed me as their own, but they had also released me from their torment. From that day forward, the farm was never the same. The crops grew taller, the animals were healthier, and the energy in the air was lighter. I knew then that I had been chosen to carry on the legacy of my family's farm, and to protect it from any other spirits that might try to claim it as their own. But even now, years later, I can still feel their presence in the air, watching over me and protecting me, and I know that as long as I honor their legacy, the spirits of the land will always be there to guide me. Growing up on a small farm in the heart of the American countryside was always an idyllic experience. My family and I worked hard every day, tending to our crops and livestock, and taking care of the land that had been in our family for generations. But one summer, something strange began to happen. Our animals started acting strangely, refusing to eat or drink, and pacing nervously around their pens. Our crops began to wilt and die, no matter how much we watered them. We even found strange symbols etched into the soil in some of our fields. At first, we dismissed these odd occurrences as the result of a particularly hot and dry summer. But as the weeks passed, things only grew worse. We began to hear strange noises at night, like whispers and footsteps, even though no one was there. Some mornings, we would find small piles of dirt and rocks in our barns and sheds, as though something had been digging around during the night. One day, while out checking on our livestock, I noticed something strange in one of our fields. It was a small, circular patch of land that looked different from the rest of the field. Upon closer inspection, I saw that the soil was darker, and there was a strange smell emanating from it. I called my family over to investigate, and we started digging into the patch of soil. As we dug deeper, we found an old, rusted metal box buried in the ground. Inside the box, we found several old newspapers and a journal. The journal belonged to the previous owner of our farm, who had lived there over 100 years ago. In it, he described a similar set of strange occurrences that had happened on the farm during his time there. He wrote of strange symbols appearing in the soil, crops dying for no apparent reason, and even sightings of strange figures in the fields at night. The journal also described how the previous owner had attempted to conduct some sort of ritual to appease the spirits that he believed were haunting the farm. He had buried a small, personal item in the soil as an offering. My family and I realized that the strange occurrences on our farm were likely the result of these spirits being disturbed by our farming activities. We immediately stopped working on the fields that had the symbols and began to research ways to appease the spirits. We contacted a local historian who was knowledgeable about the folklore of the region, and he recommended a ritual to appease the spirits. We conducted the ritual on the same patch of land where the previous owner had buried his offering, and from that day forward, the strange occurrences stopped. We learned that our farm had a long and complex history, and that our farming activities had unwittingly disturbed the spirits that had been there long before us. It was a scary and unnerving experience, but one that taught us to respect the land and its history. From that day forward, we made sure to always treat our farm with the utmost care and respect, ensuring that the spirits were never disturbed again.